What's up everyone, Thomas here, aka Reshiram's Trainer, and welcome back to another one of my videos. So a couple weeks ago, I made a poll asking what video you'd like to see next, and you voted for me to cut the Pokédex in half, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like, taking an entire Pokédex and making it half the size. Though I should probably clarify that this video is only covering Kanto, and that in the future, each region will get its own video. Now when I say we're cutting the Pokédex in half, how exactly are we going to do that? Simple. I'm going to go through the entire region and find Pokémon that fill similar roles, compare the two, and remove one. Now I should say that which Pokémon stays and which Pokémon goes is largely based on personal preference, so just keep that in mind. Also, the Pokémon that get removed here will affect future videos. So if I remove, say, Porygon, then Porygon 2 and Porygon Z would be removed from their respective regions. Got all that? Lastly, before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe, it really helps this channel out, as I'm hoping to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. All that said, let's get started. Now right away, we have a problem. There's 151 Pokémon in Kanto, which is an odd number, meaning we can't exactly halve it. My solution to this is to simply remove Mew, making it 150, which we can then halve to get 75. And this will also be our strategy for future videos, where if the total is an odd number, we simply remove mythicals until it's even. Anyway, now that we know our end goal, let's start by listing the Pokémon that are absolutely staying. For starters, well, the starters. Obviously they're staying, even if that includes Blastoise who I don't like. And while we're talking about starters, we might as well throw in Pikachu and Eevee as well, since they're basically starter Pokemon as well. And this would also include the rest of their evolution lines. I'm also going to keep all the legendaries, cause why not? There's only 4. So this means we currently have 19 Pokemon, leaving only 56 slots to be filled. Next, I'll look at version exclusives, and obviously compare them to decide who I want to keep. For reference, these are the version exclusives in Kanto. To start off with, Sandslash vs Arbok. Now I'm picking Sandslash here, for one simple reason that'll come up a few more times later. Arbok is a poison type, and Kanto has a lot of poison types. No, seriously, if you were to organise every single Pokemon across the entire series by both type and region, the type with the most Pokemon added in any generation is Poison in Gen 1. So needless to say, we'll definitely be removing some Poison types where we can, hence why I'm keeping Sandslash here. Next, we have the Oddish line versus the Bellsprout line. Now this is interesting, since both Pokemon are grass poison, so type doesn't play a factor here. So we have two options. Either we compare the two Pokemon and see which one I think is better, or more interestingly, we look at how this will affect the future. The Oddish line will later include Blossom, an entire Pokemon that could either stay or be removed ahead of time, while the Bellsprout line eventually gives us Mega Victory Bell, which is only an alternate form and thus has less value. Ultimately, I chose to keep the Oddish line, not just because I think Blossom is better than Mega Victory Bell, but also because at a quick glance, Vileplume seems like it has a better move pool, though that could just be me. Now for a tough one. Vulpix and Ninetales versus Growlithe and Arcanine. Both of these Pokemon are pretty good fire types, and I really like both of them. Both Pokemon have regional variants to consider, though Ninetales is clearly the superior one here. The Arcanine is just, without question, the stronger Pokemon here. I mean, look at those base stat totals. I'm pretty sure Arcanine has the highest base stat total of any non-legendary fire type, though I will double check that. And on top of that, it also has a better move pool as well. So despite the fact that I admittedly like Ninetales more, I'm picking Arcanine here. Right, Next up is Golduck versus Slowbro. I was originally going to compare Golduck to Starmie, but after looking at all the base stat totals, I think this makes a bit more sense. Now, comparing these two, while Golduck has a slightly higher base stat total, Slowbro pretty much takes everything else. Which is why it's surprising that I'm actually going with Golduck. Yeah, seriously. Reason 1, Psyduck feels a bit too iconic to get rid of so easily. Reason 2, getting rid of Slowbro means one less water psychic type in this region, which will be important in a little bit. And reason 3, Golduck is the favourite Pokemon of one of my friends, and I don't feel like being a dick today. So yeah, I'm picking Golduck here. Right, next up is Cloyster versus Starmie. And well, I mean, let's be real here. Starmie is a much better Pokemon than Cloyster, plain and simple. And in my opinion, it's also a better water psychic type than Slowbro, which is why I was willing to get rid of it earlier. So yeah, easy win for Starmie. Next up is Scyther versus Pinsir. And instead of comparing both of them, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to keep both of them, but in exchange, I'm removing the next two Pokemon, being Electabuzz and Magmar. I never really cared for either of these Pokemon or the evolution lines, so I'm choosing to remove both of them. This brings our total to 32, nearly halfway already. But that was the easy part. Now we'll go through the region and find Pokemon that fill similar niches, starting with Butterfree and Beedrill. Now while Beedrill is debatably the better Pokemon, especially with its Mega Evolution, Butterfree feels way too iconic, and also, it's not a poison type, so I'm giving this to Butterfree. Now for an interesting one, the Nidoran lines. The fact that these are two separate lines is probably solely due to the lack of genders in Gen 1. If they were made nowadays, I guarantee that this would be one line. Anyway, now the question is, which one do I get rid of? And it's actually incredibly easy. One of these Pokemon is within my top 10 favourite of all time, and the other is Nidoqueen. So yeah, keep the king, remove the queen. Next is Dodrio versus Fearow. Now the main purpose of these Pokemon is, to be blunt, just being an alternative to Pidgeot. But between these two, there is still a pretty clear winner, Dodrio. Not only does it have better stats, but also a better move pool. This one is incredibly easy. Jigglypuff versus Clefairy. Not only is Jigglypuff more iconic, but I also hate Clefairy with a burning passion, and if I can't get rid of my least favourite Pokemon, I'm at least getting rid of my second least favourite. Next is Hitmonchan versus Hitmonlee. And as you can imagine, these two are pretty even. Hitmonlee has slightly better stats, but Hitmonchan has a slightly better move pool, especially when it has access to all three elemental punches. So ultimately, this one was down to personal preference. And I like Hitmonchan just a bit more, so I'm keeping him. Now for a battle of the fossils. Omastar versus Kabutops. On one hand, Kabutops has a slightly better move pool, but on the other hand, Lord Helix. Praise Lord Helix it is. Dugtrio versus Marowak. Both of these are pure ground types with a base set total of 425. Both have decent move pools, with Dugtrio having a better level up move pool and Marowak having a better TM move pool. Both have alolan forms to account for as well. While Dugtrio is a glass cannon, being much faster and having higher attack, Marowak is bulkier and can actually take a hit. So while it was very close, for basically the sole reason that I actually like their alolan form, I'm picking Marowak. And lastly, a three-way. Golem versus Rhydon versus Onix. all three contributing to the widespread belief that there are way too many rock ground types in the series, despite the fact that there's only 9, and the last one was Rhyperior. Anyway, a quick look at these Pokemon makes it pretty clear who comes in third here. Onix. While Onix comfortably takes defense with a whopping 160 compared to 130 and 120, that's literally all Onix really has. Hell, not even Steelix can save it, since it's basically more of the same, and both Golem and Rhydon are not only faster, but have much higher attack at 120 and 130 respectively, compared to Onix's 45 and Steelix's 85. So as last place decided, let's directly compare Golem and Rhydon. While Golem has a slightly higher base stat total, with slightly higher defense, speed, and special stats, Rhydon has slightly higher attack, and noticeably more health. And while Golem has its Alolan form, Rhydon has Rhyperior, which is absolutely a better choice than Golem, so I'm giving the win here to Rhydon. This brings our total to 49, leaving only 26 slots available. Now to speed things up, I'm going to add a couple Pokemon that should probably be included. More specifically, the Gengar line, the Dragonite line, the Machamp line, Lapras, the Magikarp line, and Ditto, leaving just 13 left. I think now would be a good time to look at the current type distribution, see what needs improving. And as you can see, the most common types here are Water and Poison, which is to be expected. Now we can ignore Ghost and Dragon since we have all of them, and we can ignore Dark since there aren't any in Kanto. We could technically ignore Steel and Fury if we wanted to, since they were added retroactively. So Ice and Psychic are definitely our biggest areas for improvement, followed by Electric and Fighting. Now despite killing 2 Pidgeys with 1 Rock Throw, I really don't want to include Jinx here, because, I mean, it's Jinx. Also, I already removed Electabuzz and Magmar, and these 3 make a trio, so it makes sense to remove her. Now after looking through the remaining Pokemon to see what's left, here's what I've ultimately decided to be the final 13. The Abra line. Pretty self-explanatory. It gives us more Psychic types, plus they're fairly iconic. Plus, I always saw them as a kind of counterpart to the Machop line, being the brain to their brawn. Next is the Magnemite line. Not only does it give us more electric types, but they're also the only steel types in the region as well. Next is the Mankey line. This adds a couple extra fighting types to the list, and it also means we can get Annihilate later down the line. I'm also going to include the Seal line. Yes, I know this means adding more water types, but Dugong is literally the only ice type left. Now granted, I don't see a world where anyone is using this over Lapras, but it's a thought that counts. Next we have the Execute line. Not only does this give us more Psychic types, but it also gives us some non-poison grass types. Also, we can get a Alolan Executor later. Now I really struggled to fill the last 2 slots, since there were a few things that could fill it, and a lot of stuff we didn't need. And ultimately, I settled on 2 Pokemon. The first is Snorlax. Pretty iconic, and we have a space for another normal type. Plus, someone needs to block the roads. And second is Mr. Mime of all things. I was a little hesitant to include him, but decided why not. It adds another Psychic type to the list, and also adds another Fairy type as well, which is neat. And so, assuming I've done my maths right, we have our 75 Pokemon, which I'll show on screen. And here's all the Pokemon that got cut. Now is this list perfect? No, of course not. And it goes to show why we got a lot more than this in the games. You tend to have several options for filling a role. Don't want a Raichu on your team? Well, here's Electrode. Don't want a Persian? Well, here's Tauros. And so on and so forth. It really helps you appreciate how much variety we get in the games. Most of the time. But what did you guys think? What are some Pokemon that you'd keep or remove if you had to do this? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it really helps this channel out. Have a great day everyone, and I'll see you next time. See ya!